We're live on Joy 99.7 FM here in Accra. In Kumasi, it's on Love 99.5 FM. We are on over 30 affiliates dotted across Ghana's 16 regions. We are on Sky FM in Sunyani, KTU Radio in Koforidua, and Menuveve FM in Apawu, Radio Justice in Tamale, Fafa Radio in Joje. We are on Spotify, myjoy99.7FM, and also on Facebook. This afternoon, a desperate plea to avert a full-blown crisis on the labour front as Defence Minister asks agitating workers to suspend their demands for cost of living allowance.
As Defence Minister, all I appeal to all these bodies, this idea of, I'm going to go on strike, I'm going to do this. The government has all the means, they will give it to you. Trust me, I said, we are at a wartime without fighting ourselves.
And the war is what?
The economic war we are fighting.
We're here from the National Labour Commission and take you across the country as school authorities are compelled to use national service personnel to mitigate the effect of the teacher strike, which is now in its third day.
The contingency plan, national service personnel, they are at post. They are helping together and with collaboration with the directors of the education, both at the regional and the district level.
Also this afternoon,
the D-Day, where, of course, the IMF officials will be starting off by delving into our data.
It's day 2 of Ghana's crunch talks with the International Monetary Fund with focus on expenditure, inflation and debt reconciliation. I have the very latest for you. Railway Development Authority says it's unable to tell when exactly the much-touted, modernized and functioning rail system will be seen in Ghana.
What I'll tell the people who are yearning to use the line is the fact that we want to make sure we get it right. I can't put any timeline. To be honest with you, I cannot put any timeline.
In the Ashanti region, residents of Swame pile pressure on government for development projects as they add to the growing number of residents in the region who feel they've been neglected by the party they massively voted for in all national elections.
The contractor shouldn't have touched the road if he wasn't ready to fix the road.
So we are going for the IMF. Fine, that is the option available now. But what that we are saying is that we need our fair share. Our road must be constructed.
In sports,
the Ghana Athletics Association have declared themselves ready for the World Athletics Championship, which gets underway in 8 days.
And I'll take you to the UK, where the Prime Minister Boris Johnson has resigned.
I know that there will be many people who are relieved and perhaps quite a few who will also be disappointed. But I know that even if things can sometimes seem dark now, our future together is golden. Thank you all very much.
We have that and more in this edition of the Midday News with me, Emefa Apawu. Many thanks for choosing us. We are your home of independent, fearless and credible journalism. A gentle reminder, though, that the experience is always better on our digital platforms. Look for Joy 99.7 FM on Facebook for our live feed. Thanks for choosing us. We settle for the details. And this afternoon, there's a desperate attempt by government to avert a full-blown crisis on the labour front. The strike by 4 teacher unions over their demand for cost of living allowance, COLA, is in its third day, with many more worker unions threatening to join them. The workers want government to cushion them from the current harsh economic conditions in the country. A meeting between the Employment Ministry and the striking teacher unions ended inconclusively, with the teachers refusing to call off their strike. We have more on that shortly. First, though, here's a news desk report on the raft of concerns raised by nearly 10 worker unions in just the past week.
Sounds of angry workers in Ghana's educational sector as they declared a nationwide strike over their demand to be paid cost of living allowance to a tune of 20% of their basic salary, a demand government had failed to meet for months.
On different platforms and times made this call, which fell on deaf ears of government.
In just hours, there were similar demands from more groups with even more threats of possible industrial actions. The Ghana Medical Association, Professional Nurses Union, University Teachers Association of Ghana, senior staffers of universities in Ghana, and a host of others were clear on their demands. All of this is happening in the midst of renewed talks with the IMF for a possible bailout. The Trade Union Congress says it will not tolerate any austere measures on workers. A meeting between government and the striking teachers ended on rocks, a reason they insist they will not return to the classrooms.
Like you are aware, we have already presented a request. They know our demand already. I don't know they came empty-handed. So we ended the meeting.
Did they say when next you should come back for another meeting?
No, sir.
So, are you going back to the classrooms tomorrow?
No, we are not going back to the class.
Well, a member of the leadership of the Ghana National Association of Teachers, Isaac Bah, ending that report. While the stalemates persist, school authorities are being forced to fall on national service personnel to fill the absence of the striking teachers. According to spokesperson for the Ministry of Education, Kwesi Kwarteng, that is part of a contingency plan rolled out to mitigate the effect of the strike. We'll hear from him in a moment, but first, Rafiq Salam report from the WA Model School in the Upper West Region.
The school has a pupil population of 1,000, and majority of them reported to the school in the morning but had to leave due to the absence of the teachers at the school. All classrooms in the 2 football field-sized school compound are under lock and key. I bump into these junior high school final year pupils who are on their way home from the school who share their frustrations over the strike.
We are not learning anything, and BEC is also coming ahead of us. If we do not learn anything, what are we going to go and write at the BEC?
That's a report from the WA Model School in the Upper West Region. We can now hear from the Public Relations Officer of the Ministry of Education, Kwesi Kwarteng.
The contingency plan, I am aware.
That's the PRO of the Education Ministry, Kwesi Kwarteng. Well, government is meanwhile pleading with the striking teachers to return to the classroom. Defense Minister Dominic Nitiwo says there's simply no money. He's been speaking on PM Express.
So as Defense Minister, all our appeal to all these bodies is to say that we've taken the decision they should give government some bit of time and let's negotiate. They should give government some bit of time and let's talk together. This idea of, I'm going to go on strike, I'm going to do this. The government has all the means, they will give it to you. This government has shown very good faith to everybody that if they have the means, they will do it. They've never disrespected workers. They've never shouted on workers. They've negotiated with workers on good faith. Can you imagine you are leading an IMF team and workers are asking for maybe between 6 to 8 billion extra income or extra expenditure on the budget? It makes your work very, very difficult. Whatever we do, we should look at our kids and ensure that we don't leave a country where tomorrow those kids will find Ghana a different place. Trust me, I said, we are at a wartime without fighting ourselves. And the war is what? The economic war we are fighting.
Defense Minister Dominic Nitiwo speaking on PM Express with Evans Mensah. Now, it's day 2 of Ghana's crunch talks with the International Monetary Fund. Top officials from the Global Financial Organization and the Finance Ministry are focusing on Ghana's expenditure, data, inflation, and debt reconciliation, among others. Well, this forms part of government's push to get support to put the economy back on track. My colleague Blessed Suga earlier filed this report from the Ministry of Finance.
The D-Day, where, of course, the IMF officials will be starting off by delving into our data. So they're starting off, first of all, with the issues of data reconciliation by, first of all, understanding our economic outlook. Then from there, we're setting that, of course, the team can then go on and engage other stakeholders before that final plan from the ministry in terms of the letter of intent from the government of Ghana is released. I'll just take you through briefly what we know may happen today. So they'll start off by assessing some of the revenue measures and expenditure cut measures that we're taking just by ourselves. So the government policy of a 30% cut in public expenditure is where they're starting off from to assess if indeed the officials of the ministry were able to enforce that across all of the public institutions. You know that that directive was given by the finance minister. There's also the issue about government's key revenue measure, the electronic transactions levy. Government was targeting it over 4 billion, which they hope will shore up our revenue measure. That is also on the table for discussion today.
Blessed Soga at the Finance Ministry earlier. Thankfully, he's returned. He joins me back in the studios with more on this. Blessed, welcome back. Well, what more are we learning?
So it appears that the engagements have started. 10 a.m. is what's on the schedule. So officials of the Finance Ministry together with the delegation of government and the other side as well, which is the International Monetary Fund, are expected to commence talk on a tall list of issues that are supposed to be discussed for today. This is, we must state, it's not the end of the negotiations. In fact, it is expected to be almost a week-long series of engagements with other stakeholders. But yesterday, when it all started from the itinerary that we have, the Vice President, together with his team, were engaged as part of the preparatory engagements ahead of the main business today. For today, the focus will be on government's 30% slash in terms of expenditure. We know that there will be issues on some of the critical revenue measures that government has rolled out so far, including the controversial electronic transactions levy. Then there would also be a focus on some of the key sectors that generates revenue for the government in the areas of the cocoa sector, petroleum, and some other strategic means by which Ghana has been raking in a lot of forex. So these are some of the issues that are lined up for discussions today.
Just curious, the mood at the Finance Ministry whilst you were there?
Very solemn one. You'd see almost everyone busy, a lot of paperwork's happening. You don't see much of the officials outside because obviously these are boardroom matters, so you'd expect that a lot of talk will happen behind closed doors, but we're on the lookout, we're on the ground, ensuring that once we get any update, we'll let our audience know.
Thank you very much. Blessed Suga will be on the pulse at 3 p.m. on the Joy News channel. You want to tune in for more of this and more here on the Joy News channel. Well, financial advisor Yao Lati says government should immediately identify some social intervention programs that will be put on hold. He's been speaking to Joy Businesses' Daryl Kwao.
You can see that there are some specific indicators that have gone or let's say worse, and so government or the engagement may take longer. Right. Because the process is that the longer you take to subscribe onto the program, the worse your situation will be. And if your situation is a bit difficult, you take longer in the process of signing.
So Bloomberg's latest reporting is that Ghana may seek as much as $1.5 billion from the IMF. I remember that the information minister talked about $3 billion. And so I don't know whether the government is lowering its expectations, but is $1.5 billion enough?
Looking at where we find ourselves, I think you need a fund program for a short-term measure. Mm-hmm. If you look at historically, we go for Eurobond to support our budget. And the Eurobond has ranged between 1.5 to 2 billion. So a fund program will give you a short-term budgetary support. But as to whether that's enough will depend on the conditionalities that are tied to, because part of the conditionalities will require that we cut down expenditure. So if you're going to cut down on some specific expenditure and maybe suspend or put on hold some social intervention programs, that is putting a strain on government budget, then I think the 1.5 will be enough. Mm-hmm. If we're still going to continue our usual expenditure, which I don't think the fund will allow for all of them, then I think it may not be sufficient. But if we cut down on some expenditure, it will be sufficient.
Well, we can hear from Defense Minister Dominic Nitiwo, who says the Finance Minister should not be blamed for the current economic crisis that has forced Ghana to seek a bailout from the International Monetary Fund.
So the Finance Minister said that on the back of all the things he knew at that particular time. Like I said,
this was last month.
It could even be yesterday. Take it from me, it could even be yesterday. Things can change very drastically. If you have friends and investors who had serious confidence in your economy and believe that they will support you along the line, you will see the things that the Finance Minister said. I don't think that the Finance Minister should be hanged because of that. He was saying what he believed at that time.
Why shouldn't he? He misled us.
He didn't mislead you. He was telling us exactly what he felt when things were, what he saw at that time.
Defense Minister Dominic Nitiwo. Now, the Railway Development Authority says it's unable to tell when exactly the much-touted, modernized and functional rail system will be seen in Ghana. This is the authority's response to a Joy News Tracker story that recounted government's pledge to revamp the sector and the long wait by some citizens to see coaches on rails. Here's what Jojo Kobina found in this week's Joy News Tracker.
Ghana, we're going to have a first-class railway system.
Opariado is a retired Ghana Railway Company worker. He is so attached to his company that even after more than a decade of retirement, he still visits the Nsawam train station to reflect on the company's state of affairs.
To me, the railway sector is not working. This is not the company I used to work for. The rail sector has collapsed. It kept the local economy buzzing. The rail service benefited farmers and traders, but today everything is on the downturn.
The Nsawam railway station now lies in near ruin. and ends abruptly after the main Sawam Road. Due to many years of neglect of the rail tracks, thieves have stolen the lines and sold them as scraps.
From these railways crossing up to Chichamante, the risks are nowhere to be found.
Yao Wusu is the CEO of the Ghana Railway Development Authority.
What I'll tell the people who are yearning to use the line is the fact that we want to make sure we get it right. I can't put any timeline. To be honest with you, I cannot put any timeline. That I'll be deceiving you if I put any timeline on there, but we are fervently working on it.
We can now hear from the CEO of the Ghana Railway Authority, Yao Wusu, who says they are working around the clock to get the coaches back on the lines.
What I'll tell the people who are yearning to use the line is the fact that we want to make sure we get it right. As I mentioned to you, we want to minimize any risk of potential derailment or safety. All right. So, as a matter of fact, we do have plans. Those lines as they exist now, those are the old narrow gauge. We have plans to develop new standard gauge. That may take a little bit longer time. I can't put any timeline. To be honest with you, I cannot put any timeline.
That's Yao Wusu there. He's the CEO of the Ghana Railway Authority. I'll take you to the Ashanti region now. Even as the government struggles with an agitated labour front, members of the Swami Magazine chapter of the Ashanti Youth Association have served notice they will not accept any further delay in the development of the Swami Magazine industrial enclave due to any possible cut in government expenditure. Though negotiations have just started with the International Monetary Fund, there are fears of possible cuts in government expenditure as part of conditionalities. But traders at the Swami Magazine wants the government to complete stalled road projects in the enclave and other promises made to them in 2016. Nanaya Ojima visited the place and now reports.
Some roads in the Ashanti region have seen improvements and asphalt overlays since the NPP assumed power in 2016. But many others remain in poor conditions while work on others has stalled. An example is the bumpy Swami Magazine Afranchu Road, which has developed potholes.
The contractor shouldn't have touched the road if he wasn't ready to fix the road.
The once asphalted road was graded to pave way for an asphalt overlay, but work has grounded to a halt. The delay has caused persistent dust pollution affecting traders here. Joyce Kofor, a spare parts dealer, is forced to hide her products due to a extent of pollution.
They no longer water the road. We come to work and cover the wares on display. How do we get customers to purchase them? Some are very expensive, but the dust have made them unattractive.
Mama Korea, a popular spare parts dealer, has assigned employees to water the road regularly.
Nanaya Ojima's report there from the Ashanti region, taking us on a quick break here on the Midday News, which is also live on Joy 99.7 FM in Accra and Love 99.5 FM in Kumasi. Our top stories have been looking at the desperate plea to avert a full-blown crisis on the labour front as Defence Minister asks agitating workers to suspend their demands for COLA. And we've been touching base with parts of the region where national service personnel have been deployed to mitigate the effect of the teacher strike, which is now in its third day. Day 2 of Ghana's current talks with the International Monetary Fund with a focus on expenditure, inflation and debt reconciliation currently underway. When we return from the break, I'll take you live to the UK where UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has resigned. We also have sports.
Yamawa Akwaba, ba Akwaba Magic Ebusia, brand new channel, Tia Roba, Emuno Tiao, Ewo DSTV channel 149 and Go TV channel 108. Enianom Akwaba Magic Ebusia, Eddie Nidia wa Ghanaian programs mu Baufi, Ebi to set the day to have and to hold. Enyom Senior Cassia series any talk show, Bemo Wakao TV set Nichi. Akwaba Magic Ebusia, Ewo DSTV access to your 50 Ghana cedis per and Go TV value to your 25 Ghana cedis per Ebusia Akwaba.
Thanks for staying with us here on the Midday News. We are live on Joy 99.7 FM, Love 99.5 FM in Kumasi, over 30 affiliates across Ghana's 16 regions. We are live on Facebook by Joy99.7FM. We have the latest from the world of sports.
Yes, Emefa, let's talk about the World Athletics Championship because it will begin on July 15. That's exactly next week, Friday. Now, Ghanaian sprinters like national 100 meters record holder Benjamin Azamati, Joseph Paulamua, Joseph Menu, and Sean Safu Entry will all be competing at the global showpiece, hoping to break Ghana's 16-year medal drought. And the Ghana Athletics Association CEO has been speaking, and according to him, they are really ready to compete at the tournament, and he's confident that they are going to end Ghana's drought.
And we are confident about the ability to win, right?
For Benjamin Azamati, I trust him, so let's see what happens.
Okay, well, we hope it will go beyond the trust. But let me take you to the UK live now. And the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has announced his resignation as Conservative Party leader following a wave of government resignations. He came under pressure over his handling of the case of a senior official accused of sexual misconduct, following also a number of resignations that hit him in Parliament. But we'll hear from him and then go live to the UK.
Our brilliant and Darwinian system will produce another leader equally committed to taking this country forward through tough times, not just helping families to get through it, but changing and improving the way we do things, cutting burdens on businesses and families, and yes, cutting taxes, because that is the way to generate the growth and the income we need to pay for great public services. And to that new leader, I say, whoever he or she may be, I say I will give you as much support as I can. And to you, the British public, I know that there will be many people who are relieved, and perhaps quite a few who will also be disappointed. And I want you to know how sad I am.
We know that as recently as last night, Mr. Johnson said he intended to stay and fight, but the avalanche of resignations from government ministers continued through to this morning with letter after letter criticizing the scandal-hit leader and imploring him to step down. Finally, he did. He'll stay there till we get a substantive prime minister. But Daniel Dadsey is in the UK. He joins us live with more on this. So, Daniel, whilst listening to Mr. Johnson, we could hear some boos in the background. Is that nationally representative?
Definitely, but we must also know that when Mr. Johnson was walking up to deliver his speech, there was also a resounding applause from his supporters, many of whom were some of these same government ministers who asked him to resign. So yes, the UK public is very much split on this. There's been a general consensus that Mr. Johnson must go as of now. But remember that when the no confidence votes by his party members in Parliament, which he survived, was held, there was generally split opinion whether or not we wanted Mr. Johnson to leave or not. So yes, currently his decision has been applauded, but he still has a lot of support among members of the British public.
And already we know that there's a race to replace the ministers that resigned. What can you tell us about it?
Well, yes, Mr. Johnson's plan immediately has to be to put together an interim cabinet. You heard him say that. Interestingly enough, after Rishi Sunak, his Chancellor of the Exchequer or Finance Minister, resigned, he appointed Nadeem Zahawi, who 2 days later called on him to resign. So whether or not he can hold that support among giving an interim cabinet is in question. We know that Labour leader Keir Starmer has said that if he does not leave immediately, he will trigger a no confidence vote of his own from Parliament to make sure that Mr. Johnson leaves immediately. We know that Kwesi Kwarteng, who is member for Spelthorne and his business minister, actually said that he expects Mr. Johnson to leave immediately and not stay on till October, as Mr. Johnson has currently announced. But it's also informative that David Cameron stayed on till after a new leader was announced, and so did Theresa May. So he definitely has precedent to stay on and attempt to shepherd this government to a conclusive end of his regime.
Thank you very much. That's my colleague Daniel Datsey in the UK giving us live update after the resignation of UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Let's check what you've been saying on social media. What's the reaction, Manuel?
Emefa, Boris Johnson is trending #1 on Ghana Twitter with a lot of people commenting on the matter. For instance, at Coffee Joe on Twitter tweets and says, democracy versus votercracy. In most Western countries, they practice democracy, rule of law, accountability, transparency, etc. in managing public office. But in most part of ours, we practice votercracy. We just vote for public officials to be the lord over us, no accountability. And this one from Kwame Rudolph says, even Adwoa Safo, who has been absent for more than a year without permission and chilling in America with taxpayers' money, has refused to resign only in Ghana. A few of the tweets on Twitter.
Thank you so much for updating us on what people are saying on social media. Let's do Tech Thursday now. And when Ashasi moved online in 2020, electrical and electronics major Michael Boating got a pet dog, his long-held desire. However, a few weeks after he got the foreign breed, it passed away due to poor pet care practices. When it was time to choose a senior year project this past academic year, Michael decided to work on better ways to raise pets based on his experience. Michael therefore built a low-cost automated dog feeder equipped with a mobile app. Love FM's Kwesi Debra has more in Tech Thursday.
After reading more about pet ownership, he came across this gap in the Ghanaian pet care practices he thought to address. Michael built an automated dog feeder modeled after feeders on the global market, but at a much lower cost. The feeder has an automated food, water and medication dispenser with a companion mobile app for active monitoring.
It's able to deliver food, water and medication to your dogs, and then give you an alert on the temperature of the food as well as the water levels, and also tell you if your dog is eating well or not, judging by the weight of the bowl with the food in it. This is the pet calling function. So specifically, it's supposed to alert dogs at a specific frequency. Let's say I pick a German Shepherd and it's 1 year old, and then maybe I want dry food to be fed once daily. But at 13:31, do I want dewormer? Let me say no. And finally finish. So at this specific time, to deliver food. So after heating, it mixes clockwise, anti-clockwise, and finally the food will be dispensed.
That's our Tech Thursday for today, and we are building up to the NPP's national officers election right here next week on your election headquarters. Ayukweotu may have fallen out of the race, but NPP national chairman hopeful Kwabena Abankwah-Yeboah is still in the race. He says he's the right person to help the party break the 8. There's more in this political desk report by Kwikwa Sante.
When we went for the ballot, I'm the number 8. Vote number 8. Kwabena Abankwah-Yeboah to break the 8.
Kwabena Abankwah-Yeboah would have served the NPP as national treasurer for 8 years by next week when the party goes to the polls. He is seeking now to lead the party as national chairman. He touts himself as a unifier and the only one among the chairmanship contenders who can lead the party to victory in the next election.
These are the qualities I am bringing to bear, and I'm asking the delegates to give me the opportunity to serve the party. Qualities of being firm, being fair to the people, making sure that you have a listening ear, qualities of making sure that whatever opportunities are there, there's an equity in the game, qualities of making sure that we work together as a party.
Kwabena Abankwah-Yeboah believes the party needs resources to be able to match the NDC and secure victory. He wants accountability for these resources.
As a treasurer, I worked earnestly to ensure that the party's financial base was properly set up, and also to ensure that there was proper accountability by way of money that went into the various constituency accounts. I also made sure there were some transparencies set up, in the sense that anything that I sent to them, I gave them information, and therefore it helped the party also making sure that there was accountability.
Abankwah-Yeboah comes up against strong contenders, including party stalwarts Stephen Team, who will be running for chairman for the 5th time, former Siga boss Stephen Asamoah Boateng, Sami Krab, and Professor Ameyawe Kumfi.
I'll bring you the full report subsequently. It's time for our Drive Safe campaign, and make sure you use 10 signals. While you can't depend on others always signaling their intentions when driving, you can certainly dictate your actions and inform them ahead. Always use your 10 signals in advance of making a lane change or turning. You know, that's what we call the traffic heater. That's how you drive safe. You always learn to use it. That's it for the midday news. There's more when you log on to myjoyonline.com. Boris Johnson resigns. 5 things that led to the PM's downfall. Ken Oforiatta must resign or face censure motion. Kwabena Donko. Also, we have no information on construction of National Cathedral Public Procurement Authority. That's and more on myjoyonline.com. Living Word is up next with Pastor Mensa Otabil. I am Emefa Apawu. As always, many thanks for your company.